In the 13th century, a storm erupted from the vast steppes of Mongolia. From scattered tribes of nomads emerged a man who would unite them with iron will and relentless ambition. His name was Genghis Khan, and under his command, the Mongols carved out the largest continuous empire in human history. This is the epic story of the Mongol Empire. Its rise, its fury, and its legacy that still echoes across the world.
In the middle of the 12th century, the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Central Asian steppe was not a unified land, but a fractured battleground. Here, scattered nomadic tribes, the Tatars, the Merkits, the Naimans, and dozens of others, were locked in a relentless cycle of warfare, raiding, and revenge. Survival was a daily struggle against not only the brutal elements but against your fellow man. Into this world of chaos, a boy was born, around the year 1162. His name was Temujin. Legend claims he entered the world clutching a clot of blood in his right hand, a dark omen interpreted by a shaman as a sign that he was destined to become a great warrior, a conqueror who would rule the world. His father, Yasuge, was the minor chief of the Borjigin clan, a man of some renown, but his influence was limited in the treacherous political landscape of the steppe. He sought to secure his son's future through a strategic alliance. When Temujin was just 9 years old, Yasuge arranged his betrothal to Borte, the daughter of a neighboring chieftain. Leaving his son with his future in-laws, Yasuge began the journey home. But on the way, he encountered a group of his sworn enemies, the Tatars. Observing steppe custom, they offered him food and drink. But the hospitality was a mask for treachery. The meal was poisoned. Yasuge rode for 3 days before succumbing, leaving his family leaderless and vulnerable. The death of a leader was a death sentence for his family. Yasuge's own clan, fearing the burden of feeding his widow and 7 young children, abandoned them to their fate. Cast out onto the barren steppe, Temujin's family was forced into a life of extreme poverty. His mother, Holun, taught her children to survive, foraging for wild roots and berries, fishing in the Onan River, and hunting marmots and field mice to stave off starvation. This desperate existence bred fierce competition. Temujin, ever pragmatic, clashed with his older half-brother Begter, who refused to share his catch. In the harsh calculus of survival, Temujin saw this not just as sibling rivalry, but as a threat to the family's unity. With his brother Kasar, he stalked Begter and killed him with an arrow. It was his first kill, a brutal, calculated act that established his authority and demonstrated his willingness to do whatever was necessary to survive and lead. His growing reputation did not go unnoticed. The Taichiud, the very clan that had abandoned him, now saw the son of Yasuge as a future threat. They hunted him down, capturing him and forcing him into the ultimate humiliation for a steppe nomad: slavery. He was locked in a kang, a heavy wooden collar, and paraded as a trophy. But even in chains, his spirit was not broken. He watched, he waited, and during a festival he seized his chance, escaping into the night and finding refuge with a family who recognized his potential. A free man once more, Temujin began the painstaking process of building his power base. He sought out his father's powerful blood brother, Togrul Khan, and pledged his loyalty. He gathered his first followers, attracting them with his charisma and resilience. He reclaimed his wife, Borte, whose kidnapping by the Merkits would spark his first major military campaign. Each hardship had been a lesson. Betrayal taught him to value absolute loyalty. Hunger taught him endurance. Enslavement taught him the burning desire for freedom and power. He realized the old ways of tribal division led only to weakness and suffering. From these bitter roots of his youth, a new vision began to grow. A vision of a united Mongol nation bound not by blood but by loyalty and law. The seeds of the world's largest empire were planted.
The Mongolian steppe was a land of endless conflict. Clans fought constantly, alliances broken, families enslaved, blood spilled without mercy. Temujin's vision was simple yet radical: unity. He rewarded loyalty and punished betrayal. He broke down traditional tribal rivalries and promoted leaders based on merit, not birth. For the first time, the steppe tribes rallied under one banner. In 1206, at a great council, Temujin was declared Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. A new empire had been born.
The Mongols were horsemen from birth, their lives inextricably tied to the saddle and the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Eurasian steppe. From the age of 3, a Mongol child learned to ride, to become one with their mount, mastering a skill as fundamental as walking. This harsh environment, with its brutal winters and scorching summers, forged a people of unparalleled resilience and endurance. But these were disparate nomadic tribes, formidable in their own right, yet lacking a unified purpose. It was Genghis Khan who saw this raw potential, this reservoir of equestrian genius and hardened spirit, and transformed them into something far greater, something the world had never seen, the most ruthlessly efficient war machine of the medieval world. He understood that the strength of the wolf is the pack, and he would forge the scattered Mongol wolves into an unstoppable pack. The foundation of this machine was not just skill, but revolutionary organization. Genghis dismantled the old fractious tribal structures and reorganized his entire society and army based on a decimal system. Soldiers were grouped into units of 10, the Arban. 10 of these formed 100, the Zun. 10 of those 1,000, the Minghan, and 10 Minghans created a tumen of 10,000 warriors. Loyalty was no longer to a clan chief, but to one's commander and ultimately to the Khan himself. Discipline was absolute and brutal. If one soldier from an Arban deserted or failed in his duty, all 10 were executed. This fostered an unbreakable bond of collective responsibility and a terrifying level of unit cohesion on the battlefield. The individual Mongol warrior was a self-sufficient engine of conquest. His primary weapon was the devastating composite bow, a masterpiece of engineering made from sinew, horn, and wood, capable of firing armor-piercing arrows over 350 meters. But his greatest strategic asset was his mobility. Every warrior had a string of multiple horses, typically 3 to 5. This system was a logistical marvel. On long campaigns they could switch to fresh mounts, allowing them to travel incredible distances, up to 100 miles a day, without exhausting their animals. They carried little in the way of traditional supplies, instead living off the land and their herds, drinking mare's milk and, in dire emergencies, even drawing blood from their horses' veins for sustenance. This nomadic self-sufficiency freed them from the cumbersome supply lines that tethered conventional armies, giving them a strategic speed that seemed supernatural to their enemies. On the chaotic canvas of the battlefield where other armies dissolved into a confused melee, the Mongols moved with the chilling harmony of a predator. They communicated with a sophisticated system of black and white signal flags, drums, horns, and smoke, relaying complex orders across vast distances in the heat of battle. This allowed their commanders to coordinate intricate, large-scale maneuvers with a level of control previously unimaginable, moving with precision like a modern army. Their tactics shocked and demoralized their enemies, playing on psychology as much as strength. The most famous was the feigned retreat. Light cavalry would engage the enemy, then pretend to break and flee in panic, luring a disciplined but overconfident army into a reckless pursuit. Once the enemy line was stretched and disorganized, they would be led into a pre-arranged trap where the main Mongol force, heavy cavalry and ranks of archers, waited to spring the ambush. Another signature tactic was the tulugma, or encirclement. The Mongol army would envelop their opponents from all sides, a tightening net of horsemen raining down a relentless storm of arrows, whittling down the trapped force from every direction before a final decisive charge. Yet, perhaps their most potent weapon was terror. This was not mindless savagery, but a calculated and brutally effective psychological strategy. Before a siege, envoys would offer a clear choice: surrender unconditionally and be spared, or resist and face annihilation. For those who defied them, the consequences were horrific. Entire city populations were put to the sword, the massacres serving as a terrifying message to the next city in their path. They used captives as human shields and spread tales of their own ferocity, ensuring their reputation preceded them. This ruthless terror was designed to break the enemy's will to fight, to make resistance seem so futile that kingdoms would crumble and gates would open before battles even began. Mobility, discipline, brilliant tactics, and psychological warfare all fused together into a singular, unstoppable force. Entire kingdoms, from the walls of China to the plains of Hungary, fell before this unprecedented storm of horsemen and arrows, reshaping the map of the world forever.
The first true test came against the Jin dynasty in northern China. The Jin ruled vast lands with mighty walls and huge armies, but they underestimated the Mongols. Genghis Khan's forces adapted, using captured engineers to build siege weapons. City after city fell. By 1215, the Mongols captured Zhongdu, today's Beijing. Smoke filled the skies as the Jin dynasty trembled before the power of the steppe. With the Jin dynasty of northern China subdued, Genghis Khan's gaze shifted westward. His burgeoning empire now bordered another great power, the Khwarezmian Empire. Stretching across Persia and Central Asia, it was a realm of immense wealth, controlling the lucrative western arteries of the Silk Road. Its ruler, Shah Ala ad-Din Muhammad II, presided over a sophisticated civilization, boasting magnificent cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, centers of art, science, and commerce. The Shah, confident in his vast armies and fortified cities, saw himself as the master of the Islamic world. He was a proud man, and his pride would prove to be his undoing. Initially, conquest was not Genghis Khan's primary objective. He understood that the true prize was control over the flow of trade. In 1218, he dispatched a massive trade caravan numbering some 450 merchants, accompanied by his personal envoys. The message was clear: a proposal for a trade agreement, a partnership that would benefit both empires. He addressed the Shah as his most beloved son, a standard diplomatic courtesy, signaling a desire for peaceful, profitable coexistence. The caravan was a hand of friendship, extended across the vast steppes, but this hand was brutally slapped away. When the caravan arrived at the frontier city of Otrar, the local governor, Inalchuk, grew suspicious and greedy. Accusing the merchants of being Mongol spies, he seized their priceless cargo and, with the Shah's catastrophic approval, executed the entire party. To compound the insult, when Genghis Khan sent a second diplomatic mission to demand justice, the Shah had the chief envoy executed and, in a gesture of ultimate contempt, had the beards of his two companions shaved off before sending them back. In Mongol culture, this was an unforgivable humiliation. The news struck Genghis Khan with the force of a physical blow. He is said to have climbed a mountain alone, where he prayed for 3 days and 3 nights, baring his head to the eternal sky. He emerged with a terrible resolve. This was no longer about trade, it was about vengeance. An insult to his envoys was an insult to the Mongol nation and their sky god, Tengri. The Mongol war machine, hardened by decades of conflict, was mobilized on an unprecedented scale. An army of over 100,000 of his finest warriors, engineers, and strategists was assembled. This would not be a mere punitive raid, it would be a war of annihilation. From 1219 to 1221, a storm of unimaginable fury broke over Central Asia. Genghis Khan, employing a brilliant multi-pronged strategy, unleashed his armies. The Shah, who had foolishly scattered his larger forces among his cities, was caught completely off guard. The Mongols descended upon Otrar first, capturing and executing the governor Inalchuk by pouring molten silver into his eyes and ears, a grim poetic justice for his greed. Then came the great cities. Bukhara, a pillar of Islamic learning, fell in days. Genghis Khan himself rode into its grand mosque and, from the pulpit, declared himself the scourge of God, sent to punish them for their sins. Samarkand, the magnificent capital, was next. Its walls were breached, its people slaughtered, its artisans and engineers carried off to serve the Mongol war effort. The city of Nishapur suffered perhaps the most horrific fate. In retaliation for the death of his son-in-law, the Mongols were ordered to leave no living thing behind, erecting pyramids of severed heads as a chilling monument to their wrath. The campaign was a cataclysm. Entire civilizations were erased. Ancient irrigation systems that had sustained life for centuries were destroyed, turning fertile plains into barren desert. Libraries containing priceless knowledge were burned to ash. The death toll numbered in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. The Silk Road, which Genghis Khan had once hoped to make a highway of commerce, now ran red with fire and blood, its cities reduced to smoldering ruins and haunted silence. The world had never witnessed destruction on such a scale.
After Persia, Mongol horsemen thundered westward. In 1223, at the Battle of the Kalka River, they annihilated a coalition of Russian princes. Europe was stunned. Rumors spread of horsemen from the east who seemed unstoppable. And though Genghis Khan died in 1227, his descendants carried the banner further. By mid-century, Mongol armies pushed into Poland, Hungary, and even threatened Vienna. For a moment it seemed Europe itself might fall. Subscribe for more epic history documentaries. Watch next episode.